So let's listen to what Taggart has. Come in here, Taggart.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Council. Taggart McGurn, Austin HRA. Just kind of go through here. I'm going to talk a little bit, give a little bit of summary of the project. And I'm going to have Susan from Three Rivers talk a little bit, and then have Diane from the Y talk on her perspective, and then we'll bring it back. And Tom and Mr. Dankert and I will speak about the financial piece of it. So what we're proposing is a 48-unit apartment complex. This would be LMI workforce housing. This is what we're trying to accomplish. This would be a redevelopment of the Y property. So, you know, we're Austin HRA. This fits both of the things that we try to do: housing and redevelopment. So, you know, what this does, what we're asking the council is, you know, so to support this, this would be TIF, and there's no dollars that would be, you know, cost the city. It's upfront money. This would be paid back. It would be paid back over 40 years, I believe, on the tax increment and other pieces of it. It's a 3-story apartment. You know, it's, you know, one of the things on this is, you know, to kind of give a background of who we're trying to serve here. You know, a 2-person household, if it say it was a mother and a child, you know, full-time worker, $16 or $17 an hour would qualify for this. You know, a 3-person household, you know, over $19, you know, full-time. So I mean, this truly is workforce housing. So, you know, how we got here, you know, the Y has been for sale for a long time, as everyone knows. And so I had reached out to Diane and, you know, to see if we could get something going. I had reached out both on the market rate side and on the, you know, on the affordable housing workforce side. And at the time, the only interest I had was Three Rivers. And if anyone's not familiar with Three Rivers, the City of Austin and HRA have worked with them in the past. They're the developers of the Fox Point, which was the 38-unit townhouses out north of town. They have been a great partner to work for. This was a tax credit project. They do a lot of these throughout the state. They're very reputable in this. They've been doing this a long time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan. She can talk kind of more of the nuts and bolts.
She can take her mask off at the podium. Yep. Oh, she wants the PowerPoint. Oh, Ann, can you share the PowerPoint?
Yeah, just give me a second.
Okay. Sorry,
I'll get it.
Council should have all that on their iPad too, but she'll put it up here.
Okay, great. Well, maybe I can get started while that gets loaded on the screen. Oh, okay, great. No problem. Sounds good.
Right there.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Susan Stramberg, and I'm with Three Rivers Community Action. For those of you who don't know, Three Rivers is a nonprofit organization which has been serving Southeast Minnesota since 1966. We provide an array of programs, including Head Start, energy assistance, weatherization, senior services, public transit, and that's just naming a few of them. But we're also a nonprofit housing developer. And over the past 2 decades, we've developed 678 rental units. That's a mix of new construction and acquisition rehab. And we've also developed or rehabbed over 150 single-family homes. In creating this housing, we've attracted over $109 million of capital investment to the communities we work in. So we like to be very good partners in the communities we work with so that we get asked back. So that's kind of an example of what we're looking at tonight. Taggart mentioned Fox Point Townhomes. Oh, that's the project summary, but I think if the PowerPoint comes up, there's some pictures of Fox Point Townhomes, and maybe you have them in your packet. Oh, there you go. Okay, great. So Fox Point Townhomes, that was developed over a number of years, but leased up in 2019. It includes 38 townhomes, a mix of 2, 3, and 4-bedroom units. Those units are full. We have very, very little turnover, and I think about 14 families are currently on the waiting list for those units. It's a really attractive project with a lot of green space and one that we're really proud of. Fox Point would not have been possible without the incredible support from the HRA and the City of Austin and the Hormel Foundation. They were really fantastic partners from our initial application through construction and lease up, which is why we're eager to partner with you and Taggart again. So the project that we're looking at, the Mill Pond Apartments, or the former Y site, is a 48-unit apartment complex that will be a mix of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4-bedroom units, with rents ranging from $678 for the 1-bedrooms to $1,070 for the 4-bedroom units. The building will be Energy Star certified, and all units will meet universal design requirements. The first floor, as Taggart mentions, it's a 3-story building with underground parking. The first floor would house a community room, a patio with outdoor play equipment, offices for a property manager, supportive services, as well as our home ownership staff. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ojoy. He's an Austin resident that is also one of our key employees at Three Rivers, and he's just does a great job working with first-time home buyers and helping them acquire their first home. So he would be housed in this building as well. The property would serve those earning 60% of area median income. And just to give a little perspective, a 2-person household could make up to $36,000 annually, or $17 per hour. A 4-person household could make up to $45,000, $22 an hour. This really captures the majority of frontline service workers and healthcare workers in Austin, as well as Hormel workers. In addition, 50% of Austin households currently earn under $50,000, making that sort of a prime market for these units. We're really excited to be working with Taggart and the city on this project. I'll be honest, the Minnesota Housing RFP is extremely competitive. 1 in 4 projects are typically funded each year, awarded tax credits that make these properties possible. And probably the most important scoring criteria that MHFA looks at is the site. And the site here is crucial. Not only is this a workforce housing community so that it gets points for that, but it's the proximity to transit services, the walkability of this site to employers, recreation services is key, as well as the fact that this falls into a qualified census tract. So MHFA will award additional points for redevelopment that happens in a qualified census tract. Local contributions are also crucial, and Taggart touched on them a little bit, but land donation, tax increment financing, deferred loans, these are all critical pieces that help us outscore the competition in the rest of the state. So, and finally, I just want to mention a little bit about the timing. Right now, we're engaged in a market study. We've engaged an architect to prepare drawings. We will be working with a contractor on preparing estimates. There's a lot of lender and investor financial modeling that goes into these proposals, and that's all kind of in process right now, as well as some community outreach and rental assistance submittals that we'll be working on over the next couple of months. So this is sort of the time to begin in earnest in pulling all of these pieces together and engaging the analysts and the architects and the contractor in order to make this project successful for these once-a-year RFPs that happen at Minnesota Housing. If we are awarded tax credits in the current 2021 tax credit round, construction, we would find out basically the end of this year. Construction would begin in 2022 with lease-up happening in 2023. And that's all I got.
Couple other points I want to make. The last housing study we did, one of the major things in that was, with this thing, with this type of housing, over 52% would qualify for this type of project in our community. I think that says a lot. The other thing, doing the numbers, the summary on the housing study, if anyone has really dug into it, it said 1,000 units, 2025, but drilling that down, almost half of those were senior housing. With the current market rate and affordable unit needs, if you subtract the flats on 21, the current need for market rate is around 125 units. The subsidized and affordable units were at 139. So there's a higher need right now. There's no argument, we need all types of housing. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm advocating for all types of housing. But, project here in hand, good, willing partner, so something to consider. I'll kick it over to Diane to talk about the why side.
So thank you. I'm Diane Baker. I'm the Executive Director of the Y. So from a Y perspective, we listed our property when we moved to our new facility in the fall of 2019 at $2.4 million. It's been for sale since then with very little activity. So we've had Austin Public Schools, Head Start, a developer from Wisconsin have toured it, but no one has any real interest in it. It's just the cost of the rehab and trying to turn it into something. It just really hasn't stuck with anyone. So in December, we lowered the price to $1.5 million this past December. We've basically had no one tour it since COVID started with our realtor. So we were at a point where, there was no traction behind anything. So we reached out to the city. The foundation actually helps us support the ongoing maintenance costs, which run about I ran some numbers, about $97,000 a year. That does not include any of my time. That is straight labor, utilities, snow removal, permits that we still need, inspections and things like that. So it's a pretty hefty bill for the Y, who's right now just basically struggling with COVID. It's really hit us hard. So it would be really good for us to get this off of our books. It's a real drain on our resources, not just monetary, but our labor as well. We spend a lot more time than we need to over there just because we have to upkeep. We've had graffiti recently. We've had homeless people living in some of the stairwells and things like that. So it really is becoming an eyesore in the city, and we don't want that to happen. The Y owns it. And we want to take pride in our facilities, and it's hard to do that and maintain it and then do everything we're trying to do at the other building as well. So that's kind of where we're at. So when this project came up, it makes a lot of sense to us. The money that we're going to get out of it allows us to pay off our pledge that we owe to the project. The Y currently still owes $427,000 to the project. It's an outstanding debt that we can't pay right now. We also took quite a bit of money out of our endowment to operate when we first opened. So it would be really nice to pay that back. And the $650 then that we would get out of this deal leaves us a little bit extra, which would be a nice little cushion with COVID going on right now. So that's kind of where we're at. Again, really excited about this opportunity from a United Way perspective, which was the previous hat that I used to wear. Housing changes lives. This kind of housing would be so beneficial to our community. I know that there are a lot of studies that prove that. So it would be really cool to see a Y that is a community organization come full circle and become a community housing project. So I think there's a lot of synergy in that, and it makes a lot of sense. So I hope that you will consider this. And again, it's not just about getting rid of the property, but doing something really cool for our community. So thank you.
All right, now we're getting the nuts and bolts of what we actually need to make this work. Mr. Dankert.
So in working with Taggart, Susan at Three Rivers, and Diane at the Community Rec Center, Susan came up with the estimates from the architects, which basically pegged this construction, this development at just at almost $16 million. If it makes it through council, we'd be requesting some funds for the Hormel Foundation. City of Austin would be in for about $1,750,000 in grants, loans, all of which would be paid back. Granted, it takes 25 to 40 years. Three Rivers would sell the mortgage, get the mortgage tax credits, about $12.6 million. They have about $400,000 of energy and sales tax credits. And with that, they're still short of about $635,000, but they're working with their architects on some potential cost savings that would eliminate that, or they could also get some more MHFA secondary financing. What happened from last year to this year, I don't know if anybody's read the paper lately or followed the construction costs. We saw recently something in the Star Tribune that lumber costs alone have added $9,000 per unit of an apartment building. Take 48 units times $9,000, and this year compared to last year, it's over $400,000 of additional cost just in the wood. That's what's driving a lot of these costs up, even for private developers who are doing market rate. And included in this, as Ms. Baker noted, $650,000 is what we'd propose in this project to get back to the YMCA, which takes care of all their outstanding debts, liens, eliminates the need for continued operational funding to mow snow, do the snow, keep utilities on and the sprinkler system running because of the fire code requirements. So now if we go to the next page, where is the City of Austin going to come up with $1,748,000? I tried to look at where the source of some of our money came from to put us in this position. First payment, or first number, is sitting in fund balance, just under $365,000. Back in 1998 or so, the Hormel Foundation granted over $2 million to the Murphy's Creek project, which is a mixed project, for which that development is a district for which that developer will have to pay back the City of Austin that grant money. Granted, we refinanced it to now be in 2048. But when they redid that, they gave us an interest payment to pay up all the interest they owed us to that period of time, which was $365,000. Again, that money came from a similar type project that the foundation just gave us money to then loan to the project. So again, sitting in fund balance, you could buy police cars, market rate housing, you can do whatever you want with it, quite frankly, but we tried to show you where some of that money came from to try to peg that for a similar type project. Right now, in working with our TIF consultant, we have the CRC TIF district out there, that's stretch of land, that's generating excess increment for which we're going to have to shut that down in 2021 because at the end of this year, all the development costs, all the debt that was taken on is paid off. However, because this is a workforce development project, the TIF law allows us to literally take some of that money out of that district and put it into this project. We could do nothing. We have to give all that money back to the county, and then they'd split it city, county, school based on our tax levies. So, you could eventually get $90-some thousand, $85,000 of that back. But in this scenario, you could literally put $283,000 of that right into this project and not have to give that portion back to the county to redistribute. $500,000 is proposed out of the Housing Initiative Fund, Fund 48. We've been setting aside dollars in there. We also got excess fund balance. We're waiting for the AOK from our auditors for the current year in the general fund. Again, these are all loan dollars. And that one would be paid back with at 1.5% interest with the tax increments that come in. I think under the original proposal, Susan had about $330,000 of principal, paying a bank 4.5%. Well, we redid the math and said we can loan you more, lower the interest rate, and still come up with the same dollars to help them bridge that gap to get to that $16 million project. The next line, $400,000, City Housing Initiative Advance again, or general fund, for which the HRA, they haven't voted on, but under the proposal, the HRA right now is getting money back on the Fox Point development. The excess tax increment being generated from that development, we've pledged back to the HRA for costs that they had as part of the Fox Point development. They're proposing that they will rebate that back to the city to help with another workforce development project. In addition to that, the HRA has $201,000 of funds on their side. 101 of it came from a grant for the Fox Point development that they never needed. But the requirement that you've got it restricted on your books that it has to go for another workforce development project. So 101 would come directly from that, which is what they need to use it on, and the other 100 would come from their project funds. So again, we'd be looking for roughly $1,750,000 of funds from the city of Austin that, in essence, when this is all said and done, granted, I'll be gone, probably all you'll be gone, would actually pay the city back. And quite frankly, when they paid back the Hormel Foundation grant of $525,000, you actually make money on the project. Again, you have to wait some time to do it. But as the Murphy's Creek project was 20-some years ago, an investment in the community that is now paying back. And it will pay back potentially a lot of money depending on how the tax increments go. If the valuation continues to increase, that's more tax increment to help pay the project back. What's the next slide? All right, I think I'm done. Oh, yeah, here's where Taggart and I can both talk about. There is an opportunity that we are exploring that Three Rivers has said, you know, it doesn't get us any more points, but there is the potential that they would include that in the project, and that is actually adding a floor for a Head Start program. Head Start right now has 131 kids in the program. They rent at Holy Cross Church. They've been there a long time, but the facility has got some challenges for the Head Start program.
It's got multi-level. Right now they have multi-level and the bathrooms are not in close proximity. The other thing this would do would allow expandability. You know, be able to expand the program. They heavily utilize the transit program that's right in the route. That's one of the key things for this location, why it scores so high, it's right in the transit route. So that would be another key thing on that.
That added cost is about $2.7 million, for which we're currently working on potential funding sources for that project, because they can't fund any of that out of theirs. Again, that's basically adds another floor to the facility. Three Rivers has been very gracious to work with us and say, you know, the people that are using our facility would probably have a need for that. And as long as somebody, you know, can help cover the costs, they'd be willing to include that in on the project. Again, it doesn't add any points, but it adds makes sense as to where the project would go based on their current restrictions. We're working with funding sources to see if that can be approved or get funding for that, but again, it all starts with the city council. And as Susan had indicated, timing is critical. It takes, you know, 4, 6, 8 weeks for them to get all the studies done, to get all their ducks in a row. You have to have the application in by early July for the tax credits. What we'd be looking at, much like Fox Point, took 2 applications to get it done. You indicated to us you really like the scoring on this system. 1 in 4 gets funded. We're very hopeful that this would be one of them, and based on how Susan and Three Rivers reacted to the site and got architects going and got consultants going on it, I don't think they'd spend the money if they didn't think this was a viable site. But again, location is key to the tax credits. This location is key. If you wanted to put this project out south of town or something, as John Erickson, the former HRA director, says, don't waste your time. You're not going to get the points. Taggart, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, that kind of summarizes it. Thanks. And is there any questions? Well, shoot. If I can't answer it, someone will.
Susan, did you say Three Rivers is involved with the Head Start? That's like something you guys do?
So Three Rivers operates Head Start in 3 counties, Goodhue, Rice, and Wabasha counties. SEMCAC is the Head Start provider here in Mower County. SEMCAC is sort of a sister community action agency to Three Rivers, so we work with them and collaborate on a number of things. But yes, we've had some conversations with their Head Start director and their executive director, and think that we could work out a good partnership with them if if the funds are available to make that a possibility.
Okay. Any kind of funding from them, are you seeing, or?
You know, we've talked a little bit about their funding is pretty restrictive. So, you know, they might be able to get some funding for like additional playground equipment because what we would normally put in would not be sufficient for a Head Start playground. So I think around the edges and some of the finishes and things like that, they would be able to help with that.
Head Start, Joyce, gets a lot of funding from the federal government, for which if the federal government is funding capital, for some reason, they think they own it. So having the federal government try to pay for a floor for Head Start will eliminate her ability to sell tax credits. So there'll be more chairs, tables, playground equipment, those things. If they want to take the playground equipment, go ahead.
So actually, the HRA board chair is here tonight, Jerry. I'll just have, Jerry, I don't know if you want to say anything quick.
Real quick. I come wearing two hats. I'm the chair of the HRA and the chair of the Port Authority. I've been involved in the port for almost 30 years. And one of the things that's driven our lack of industrial development is workforce housing. So this project really is high on my list of things to get done. We need workforce housing when you've got upwards of 50% of the people that qualify to live in housing like this. It just makes a lot of sense to me, and I think most of the port and the HRA support this project. Thank you.
So can I just go ahead and make some comments then?
Sure.
At this point, ask them questions if you could, and
Okay.
then we'll get into the point of view. Can you guys talk through timing? So obviously, timing important. Early July, kind of the final deadline. Can you walk us through, like, what's the absolute drop dead date in the city? Right? Because my guess in the conversation this is it market rate, is it not? And so I'm trying to get a feel for, like, is tonight an absolute yes or no? Or is it a, boy, there's some steps that have to take place? What is that?
For our timing of the project, we looked at this as a work session as your discussion. And if this made it through the work session, because as I've told Susan, nothing's official at a work session, that if a favorable recommendation came out of this, we would put this on the April 19th council agenda for an official approval, for which that would give Taggart and I time to work with Susan, because the whole goal here, my thought process is the HRA would handle this project. It's a Housing and Redevelopment Authority, which that's what they do. They just need our funding to help do it. So that would allow us time to get our ducks in a row, but as Susan indicated, well, we'd really like this decision 2 weeks ago, because of all the things they have to do to get ready. An application like this doesn't happen overnight. We've urged her, when this first started back in January, that we would like this application for this period or this year, June 30th or July, early July, so that Diane doesn't have to pay for another year of operational costs on a facility, and it gets further dilapidated with homeless and graffiti or whatever else it might be. They've taken a leap of faith with starting the housing studies, paying the architects, et cetera, hopeful that, this will go forward. If not, they're out. I mean, that's cash out of their pockets. It shouldn't be a concern of yours. It's just, we had to get the timing down. And then if it gets favorable reviews here, I've got it scheduled for the April Hormel Foundation meeting, because as the funding showed, they're a major piece, a contributor to the project, that we would need some special reviews from them too. So timing is key.
All right, thank you. Timing is key. Just by way of a short, maybe a little longer than short story, Taggart came over to my office in corrections. What was that, Taggart? What, 6 weeks ago? First I heard, and what he did, he presented a colored picture of what the site would look like with this Three Rivers project on it. And I just, I think first or right there at the beginning, say I really couldn't endorse that. I saw that property as something more of a market rate. The train was pretty far down the track at that time. I get why things have to move the way they do, but it was, again, just 6 weeks ago when I was alerted to this. So I met with Craig and intimated my recommendation of, I see it more as a market rate. What can we do? Who's out there? Within a day, we were in Mankato visiting with Apex on a different project prospect, and I think I sabotaged that meeting by reeling them in and identifying the YMCA as a potential site for what they do. They do a lot of repurposing of buildings. They also do ground-up construction. In all of Mankato, you can't drive a block without something they've done. So they showed us what they did. They are energized by such. So they ended up coming and touring the site just last Friday. They're asking for information to go forward. In the meantime, another entity came that was the grand experiment that worked with the Stenzel Group. So Stenzel Group put up the flats on 21st. Opened in June, 82 units, full, all but the ones that are income-based. They can't seem to fill, and according to Jana Norman, those are really big. They see so many people come into the door that are overqualified with income that they can't fill those. So a great experiment that was successful. So the Stenzel Group also asking for information, site plans, whatever else they can get a hold of, and are doing their due diligence. I think Craig got an email from them today saying that they really want to pursue this project, and they know timing is of the essence. They don't know a lot. They don't know anything about this project right now. It's proposed as a low to moderate, but they are very, very much interested, and they are a proven commodity. They were looking to put another flats on 21st right next to the other flats on 21st because the demand is such. So a few things that come to mind is as a resident long timer in Austin, I struggle to think of the last private developer that put up a market rate apartment other than the Stenzel Group in 2020. And I go to probably 1970 when the Key apartments were built and now our Campus View. I can't think of another private developer that put up market rate apartments in Austin since then. We certainly have promoted and received market rate or low to moderate income in Fox Point, Murphy Creek, Whittier Apartments, all within the last 20 years or so. HRA is our biggest landlord. This will not be HRA owned, but it is still a low to moderate, and I would like to have people think a little differently about our 52% that earn $50,000 or more live in Austin, and I wonder if the tail's wagging the dog here to say those that make more can't find adequate housing. So we are left with what is becoming the low to moderate income because that's what's available here. In talking to Jana Norman again out there, she said that whole place is filled with 20 to 25-year-olds. And if you recall our retreat when we had the rural policy women talk about ages that we should be going after, they said don't even try for the 20 to 25-year-olds. They don't live here. You want the folks that'll be coming back once they have families. So wouldn't it be nice to have best of both worlds? And so with that as a vision and hearing some very, very promising developers want to build on that site, I asked Taggart for just some consideration of time. If he could be patient. I get that there's a timeline in July, but I was just asking for patience. Now, things moved very quickly in the last 6 weeks. Because I heard Hormel Corporate was quasi-endorsing this, I spoke with Jim Snee, absolutely out of the gate said he or the corporation has no dog in this fight. They are interested in just as citizens of not seeing a building sit empty, but they have no sway either direction of what that should be. I met with, Jim Snee, I asked for a meeting with Mr. Edinger from the foundation and asked him to facilitate that, and he got back to me with a text that said Mr. Edinger deferred to Sherry Dankert and Raleigh Gensler. So I met with them, and again, explaining how the timeline is. I don't want to sabotage a project. I get that there's timing is of the essence. It's a very unique place that we find ourselves in that there's two viable options that do check a lot of boxes for us. And so the whole background of these conversations I'm having and is all based on what's best for Austin. There's just no other way to say it. We all have the best interest of Austin. It's just what that means to us and how we skin that cat. So also I feel, so in that meeting with Raleigh and Sherry Dankert, Raleigh's comments was, we're all ears. They can support this low to moderate because that's what they do. That's what that foundation, the mission is. So other than that, the pressure isn't, we have to have this thing off our books. We don't want to pay $100,000 a year. There was none of that dialogue. It was, we're all ears. So I was encouraged by that. I just want to keep people in the loop from my perspective, knowing that we were kind of put in a corner pretty early on this because it was pretty far down the track. Again, we find ourselves with 3 acres of property on Main Street, and both of the developers, prospective market rate developers, commented, where can you find 3 acres on Main Street? And part of the background of, yes, it's been for sale since 2019. I believe they exited in February or January of 2020, opened up their new facility. So 2020 was, I hate to say it, but kind of a throwaway year. Not a lot of people are doing much of anything. Now with the state of Minnesota in a surplus, the federal CARES Act and other PPP has kept people alive and probably better than they thought they would through a pandemic. Markets change on a dime. Interest rates are low. Whatever it is, Taggart asked the group 2 years ago, I guess no interest, and then all of a sudden 6-8 weeks ago there's interest. And so what I hate to lose, as I identified, I can't think of a market rate private developer coming into Austin and putting up a complex before Cenzel Group did for 50 years. What I hate to see happen is, because of a timeline on a low to moderate income project, that is a nice project, there's no doubt. But knowing what we've built throughout the years to accommodate the low to moderate, I'd like this one and this piece of property to be a market rate. If we don't allow the 2 developers of the private market rate developers to go through their due diligence and bring us a proposal, then I'm afraid the message coming from Austin will be, don't even try Austin on market rate. They aren't going to listen. I worry about that. It's been 50 years since we've had someone come around. Take a drive with me down from Keene Motors, around that corner. You have on the left-hand side the old Pizza Hut, and behind there's some market rate apartments. Go to the intersection where Nichols gas station is, look to the right, there's the R&F apartments. Again, I'm sure they're market rate and they're privately owned. Come up the way a little bit, you got Pickett Place, HRA, nice facility for income base. Continue on down Main Street, you get into Main Street or into the downtown, you get the Chauncey and the Courtyard, which are an HRA property, a market rate, and then you got the Twin Towers. What I think is obviously lacking is that step with a market rate apartment in the core of the city, where you are honoring the investment made by Mayo of recent to largely close their Albert Lee Hospital, move it to Austin, invest millions. 2 doors down, you have the city's investment in our flood wall and our Hall of Honor wall, and what would be considered a view of Austin is the Mill Pond on 3-acre site. Those things lead me to believe that there's something else to do with that can be done with that building. And I'm hopeful that we can buy some time for these developers to put together a plan to present for the greater good. We also have a lot of investment from our shop owners, our pizzas, our bars, our Twice as Nices, our artworks. What I'd like to honor their investment also is with a 70 to 80 unit market rate with folks that have a little more disposable income to honor their investment, spend their money within the downtown at these businesses. You look at Austin, and I challenge you, look at Austin in 50 years and see what difference it might make to have in the core of your city a market rate or even above. These folks, developers are talking nice touches, a touch above the market rate, underground parking, rooftop decks, they have a lot of creative ideas, and they have been proven to build here in Austin and do good work. So I just hope you can imagine Austin in 50 years with what it might look like if it's a low to moderate income complex, or if the potential is there and it becomes a 82 unit market rate or above complex.
So I had the opportunity, actually with Obala, when I first started with the city council in January, got an invitation from the Chamber CYP group to meet with them because they wanted to meet with the new city council folks, and a lot of them hadn't really been engaged in city government, so they had a lot of questions for us. The very first question we got from them was about urban downtown apartment living. There's just such a desire. We see it in so many cities, and we're all thinking of Minneapolis and Chicago and these big cities. It's not just those. It's Rochester, it's Mankato. That urban lifestyle is something that a lot of people really are seeking, especially the young professional group. We all know there's a dearth of housing and apartments in particular at all levels across Austin. The mayor mentioned the Stencil Group. They really kind of stuck their neck out and put in the first market rate in 50 years. And it was responded by basically filling up in one summer in the middle of a pandemic. And so I think that caught their attention. When Taggart first approached me with this as a member of the HRA board, I thought it was an interesting proposal and I wanted to hear more, but I also told him I'd still prefer market rate if we could possibly get it. I understand that, he did some work and others did some work a year and a half ago. And I'm not saying that they didn't try their best. They very likely did, but things really changed. I mean, a year ago, the stock market was crashing and none of us knew if we'd ever get to leave our houses again. And now, there's been a lot of stimulus money and there's vaccines and things are picking up and things are flying off the shelves. I don't think that we see a lot of economic conditions like we do right now, and you really have to pounce to kind of get a development when you have these positive economic conditions. For me, the same things that, appeal to this project are what's going to appeal to a market rate developer, because we would all love to be able to, take a couple mile run along, the bike path and whatnot and head to the library and become members of the YMCA. I imagine if I'm one of these developer groups, I don't have to pay and take up square footage for a gym because the brand new rec center is like a block away, right off a walking path. Folks can walk or bike to Corporate South, the Mayo Clinic, and as the mayor mentioned, there's all sorts of retail and restaurants, and we will only see more. I know we have a few empty storefronts in Main Street, and having that sort of building go up there, I think would really, really continue to revitalize our downtown. If we have legitimate interest. We have developers who literally stopped, dropped, and drove here to check it out. And so I really want to give those folks some time here. I wish that we had a few more months before this application was due. It sounds like for this year that we don't. So I'm not at this point in favor of going forward with this application because I really do want to give some private developers a little bit more time. I think what makes this score so high right now will still be there in 6 months if the private market doesn't develop. I understand that the Y has some interest, and I think there's ways that we could look. There are possibilities that we might be able to look at to help them with some of their ongoing expenses. But the Y was listed for 2.5, I think, and then 1.5, and now it's 665. And I imagine that for private developers, that's a big change, right? I also think that from what I understand, there's now concrete numbers and what it would cost to abate and tear down the building, because that's really what we're talking about for any of these projects. And so I think all of that has really driven a lot of interest. And so I would like to see some time to give those folks a chance to see what they can come up with, because I think the mayor's right. If we kind of snub our noses at them now, every city in Minnesota is begging for somebody like that to come and build an apartment complex. And so if we kind of turn our noses up at them now, we're not going to get them back.
First of all, I want to thank the HRA, the team, and Three Rivers for the opportunity and coming to presentation. And thank you, Mayor, for your input and also looking at a different approach to see if we will have a private constructors to use that building. From what I'm seeing with my first HR meeting, looking into this and also talking to Tager, there's a lot of things we will say, the food is not on table. This is what I will start. So the food is cooked for us, and the only thing what we need to do is start eating. So first of all, Austin will not spend any dime on this. We're not gonna do anything to lose. So it's all nothing we have to worry about in that. As I said, when I was talking to citizen, what needs do we have in Austin? Affordable housing is in high demand. And don't mistake me, private constructed or market rate is in need. But we see Austin is growing. Austin is not like 10 years ago. We know every year we have Hormel is tracking new employee in town, and Mayo Clinic is attracting two employee. Both of them mix with income. And looking into this, I know both of us are looking for the best thing for Austin. You know, HRA, the city council, everything either is a market rate or affordable housing is benefiting all our citizens. And when I look at this, I know the mayor, you talk highly like the people with more income and also to be living in that area. But we forget that Hormel Plan is the industry that keep Austin moving. Without Hormel Plan and QPP, we will not have a corporate office in the other side of the road. So when we look into this and see and ignore a project like this whereby we can have them, if you make more money, you can go rent there. You can go rent in Fox Point, or we have a different opportunity. I know it's timeline here is what affecting us. And to see someone who work at Hormel with a working distance whereby they can just walk in there and go, I think that's a big opportunity for them. And overall, I'm interested with anything, but as we can see now, I see this is a meal which is ready for us, and anyone is interested and to miss this opportunity, I think will be a great loss. And one last thing, when they say we will have another support from a Head Start to have another maybe a daycare for our children. You know, we have a high crisis of a daycare now within our town, whereby all of us are advocating to have more daycare. But if we have a floor that will be, you know, built so that we can have Head Start of a daycare to support our children, I think this is a big win for our city too, because all of this need, we are looking into it. I know timeline is crucial, but we have to think ahead. Maybe in 2 months, we will not have a private developer that will say, those who show interest, maybe they'll be back up, and then we lose this already. So we are losing 2 projects, that which is laying in front of us. So as we move forward through this discussion, as we explore more, I hope every decision we make here, it will be something that our city will not look back 50 years from now. We wish we could have listened to HRA and built that 48 unit over there. So the food is your end. No one will refuse a pizza if it is cooked. So after that is all, we can go hungry and we can be, I wish I would take the last bite.
To expound on the food analogy, Obala, thank you. If you were interested in serving that food, the private developer, Stensel Group, said if all things pencil out, they'd be putting a shovel in the ground in August this year. HRA, you heard, to be a 2022 project ready for occupancy in 2023. So if timing is of the essence, and it is, the quicker project, if it were to work out, would be the private market rate.
I'm on the HRA board. I found out about this about a week and a half ago, so it was kind of new to me too. You know, Taggart's saying there is a need for the low to moderate income housing. I agree. But I also agree there's other locations, possibly east of the post office or some areas over there that might be a better fit to get rid of some of that dilapidated housing, put something like this there. They're still located downtown, have access to those facilities. I think the Y is a prime location for the market rate housing, for the fact that, as was mentioned, I think by Steve, is that, you know, if I'm moving to Austin, if your son or daughter's moving to Austin and you go look at it, try to find an apartment, the flats are full, where are you going? You going to Albert Lee or Rochester? I know there's some teachers at Ellis that looked here this summer. They moved to Albert Lee to a flats type facility because there's nothing here. Now they're driving back and forth. So we lose those young folks that could live here. I think as far as the why being market rate, you're going to attract, it could be anybody. It could be a Hormel worker, a supervisor. It could be a management at Quick Trip. It could be a city worker. We're just giving them an option as something nicer than what we have to offer now, which is really not much of anything. They're close to downtown. They, as Mike mentioned, they join the Y. They go downtown, spend some money. They walk down Hard Geranium. They walk the Mill Pond. They get involved. I think a little more money spent for the folks that would live at market rate. So I do agree with Taggart, but I think there's another fit in a different location for that. And I also agree the fact, Mike's comment, that this is being pushed way too fast. Like I said, I found out a week and a half ago and I'm on the board. And so now we've got a month or weeks to decide this. We're just being rushed too fast. We've got some developers that are possibly interested, that have a strong interest. This just needs to be tabled for some time. But I do agree that the rec center, or the Y, should be more market rate.
Hey, Craig, can you talk a little bit more about what kind of timeline are we looking at with the private developers? Because, you know, I think as we've had the conversations, I'm, you know, similar to Mike in terms of, you know, market rate's preferable, but, you know, I'd also like to be the center fielder for the Twins, right? So hope's not a strategy. And, you know, 5-6 weeks ago, we had nobody. You know, obviously now, and I think, you know, thanks to your proactive efforts, we clearly have more interest. I mean, as we make decisions as a city, we're making 40, 50-year decisions. So I don't want to make a poor choice just from a short-term standpoint, but I also don't want to just leave a project on the table if we're just kind of hoping we're getting somebody in there. So can you talk a little bit more about, like, how serious are the developers? What kind of timeline does that look like, and, you know, everything around that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't promise you one way or the other, but I think they are genuinely interested. As the mayor said, you know, with Apex, when we first started with them, we weren't talking about the Y site. The mayor essentially asked them if they would consider that, of which they said yes, they would. Stencil Group is pretty excited about the possibility. Going back, they were interested in looking at what we kind of termed the Riverview project. Several homes had to be acquired there, and the advantage of that was the homes were affordable. Kind of the disadvantage is that the homes were affordable, and for them to find an existing home to move to made it that much higher, and they had to, you know, they had to have incentivized and dealing with 14 property owners and those sorts of things. Made for real challenges. We've had other developers that have come forward, and I guess in my opinion, probably, you know, if you put enough money on the table, somebody's going to do a project. I think they asked exorbitant amount of money. They need to believe that in Austin, and you know, they need to stretch with us. If we're going to have a partnership with them, they need to believe in it and know that, or at least feel like there's a good chance of getting a better rent. We've been struggled by prevailing rents. I think that's what makes the Flats on 21st such an exciting project, to demonstrate that being filled up so quickly. But from the Stencil Group standpoint, when we started with them on Riverview, they wanted to move quicker, so they went out, you know, on an open greenfield site. Now they're looking at the possibility of having one site that we can probably get control of fairly easily, and doing that quickly. What are the final numbers on what their ask would be? We don't know that right now. So, you know, the time to try to, are we an inch apart, or are we 5 miles apart? I can't tell you one way or the other, but they're excited about it. They like the opportunity to be able, as the mayor mentioned, they have another pad that could do phase 2 on their current property. They were really excited about being able to sort of have a different offering if they're going to have sort of a fixed cost in an apartment building. Having one that has a different setting excited them quite a bit versus having 2 in the same locations. Not that they wouldn't necessarily do that, but having another offering of which, you know, they're very sensitive to. They realize, I think, same thing that's been mentioned. There's, you know, the younger folks would like something with an urban feel to the extent that Austin has that certainly in the downtown area. So I don't know if that answered your question well enough, but I think there's excitement about it. Will it come through with the final numbers? I guess time would tell.
What I'm hearing from you, there's a lot of smoke, right, which is better than where we were, you know, a couple months ago. I think there's probably fire, but obviously we don't. But expect what, how many weeks to know something? 6 months?
Yeah, that's really, it's hard to say on the, I think soon, but I don't want to promise you. You know, the Apex group, we've been working with them for quite some time. Part of that's been the pandemic, part of it's just reevaluating when they looked at the Riverview site as well. So we moved on to look at a different site. So, you know, I thought that one would move faster as well, but it didn't. So now they're here saying they want to move. Is that accurate, or will it, you know, not come to fruition? I can't tell you for sure, but it sure looks good.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. And I'm excited because good things are happening in Austin, and this just demonstrates that there are great opportunities. I'm Elaine Hansen, the president of the Austin Area Chamber of Commerce. We are very excited about what's going on, and love certainly the new Y facility. It's a big plus. HRI does a great job in the community, so it's really good to see a lot of things. From our standpoint, though, we are very actively interested in more market rate housing. We're finding that lots of companies coming to town are looking for housing. Really great news, New Tech is coming to town. They're building this wonderful building. Are they going to be looking for affordable housing, or are they going to be looking for market rate? I would suggest perhaps market rate. In 2019, when the project was going forward, the chamber did stand up and say that our members are really looking for those market rate housing. It is continuing to be a big issue for us. We had our board retreat last week, and housing is a huge initiative that we're interested in. It's not normally the work of the chamber, but we are very committed to the success of the community, the business community, and so a big part of that is to have adequate housing. And so as a chamber board, it is an initiative that we are going to be working on, and we certainly see this project as one that we would definitely get behind and want to support very strongly. I've had an opportunity to visit with some of our downtown merchants because one of the points shared in the HRA presentation was the fact that there would be more people in the downtown area to shop. But our local owners and managers that I spoke with today did not feel confident that those were going to be the people that would be able to really spin and increase their business. They were also concerned about having more kids with perhaps less supervision and just challenges that come with that. They're experiencing currently some graffiti and vandalism to their properties right now. So that was a concern they had as well. But I think one of the bigger stories that we can tell is the work that Kristen does as our community concierge, because she works with professionals who are looking at making Austin their home. Oftentimes, I really think that Kristen helps to make that final sale for a person to decide to take the job and then to actually make Austin their home. So with that, I'm going to ask Kristen to share some information from her perspective.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for taking a listen here. So I do work with about 250 new people coming to town each year, and these are professionals, many of them with Hormel Foods, with the Mayo Clinic, and with other companies, but those are two of our biggies. And every month, I put together a list, calling the landlords of our market rate houses, just houses and apartments, to see what we have. Right now, we have 21 units, period, in town that are market rate units, and we have 27 people coming right now. And every day I get notifications of more folks coming to town. And I oftentimes get an opportunity to tour around with them, although that's a little bit more challenging right now. And as we talk about what's available, we're just not, we're not seeing much. And I hate to lose them to our neighboring cities. Oftentimes we're losing them to Rochester because there really is nothing here for them to to find. And even some of the market rate houses and apartments that we have aren't totally suitable for many of those folks. Like we've mentioned, they're looking for more of an urban appeal or something that might be a little bit higher end, and we can't serve those customers. So those folks eventually will maybe buy a home, and they won't buy that home in Austin probably because they've become accustomed to living in another community. So, one of my goals is to help retain and attract some of these new folks to town, and it's a challenge when we don't have adequate housing. So I just want you to keep that in mind. We do have these large companies here that really, are trying to serve some great professionals, and we don't have any place to put them. Thank you.
Can you just define a professional for
us? So what we define as a professional is anybody with a 2-year degree or higher. So, I mean, it could be all the way up to a doctor at the clinic, and many times it is. Or it could be someone who's just been, through the community college or possibly a college graduate, so.
Thank you.
I think it's probably a given that we'd all prefer market rate housing. But the only two people that we've been working with only show interest once they've basically been blackmailed that somebody else is ready to put a project together, that they would be willing to try this. Stencils already has plans to build on another pad out there. So why wouldn't they go ahead with that, given the success that they've had in the building they built? And we get this market rate housing in the Y and have two projects. Tell me that your market rate developers are going to come in here and build for nothing like this project. I think their ask from us is going to start at the 1.7, 1.8 million that we're putting into this project that we're going to get back. They're going to ask for that just to give them to build. You're not going to get a market rate project built for nothing. So you're going to have come up with a lot of money out of our pockets to get market rate housing. The location, sure, it's great looking out over the mill pond, but you're also looking out at, no offense, but the Hormel plant, an empty Bellisio Foods building. You're between Pickett Place and the Cedars. I don't know if that's appealing to market rate people or not. Just because we allow this project to move forward doesn't mean that it will actually happen. As we've said before, it took other projects, it took the Fox Point project 2 tries. And if you go look at those Fox Point built project, I think that's a beautiful building. I've heard nothing but compliments. The people love it. Other people living in town are very jealous of that project. I think we're discounting the people that would be living here. Don't they already live here in some form or another, and aren't they already spending money in this town? They're just going to have easier access to the downtown businesses to spend their money there. I did talk to Jana Norman who manages the flats. The income level that she threw out is much lower than the income level number that Taggart mentioned tonight, so obviously they're working with different figures than we are, or this project would be. And to say that, I don't know, I mean, I don't even want to make this comment, it just blows my mind that people would think that the kids from this housing project would be any worse off than any other kids, but I think that's just not good at all. So I would be in favor of allowing these people to attempt to try and put this project together. I think the stencil people would probably go ahead with their project because they've had success. They know that there is a need. That project didn't cost us anything but tax abatement, wasn't it? Or TIF, tax abatement. So there was little to no cost there to get that building built. You know, like Mr. Clark said, we've been working with APX for 3 years now and can't seem to get a project going. And it's not because there isn't a need. We've proven tonight that there's a need for both market rate and the LMI, but we've got an LMI project sitting right in front of us. Why can't we take a chance and see if we can get it done?
One quick comment, Jeff, you're right. The flats in 20 months, 50%, or this is 60%. The HRA actually sponsored the financing on that, so they had offered the 9 units, 10%, and it's 50%, so it is less.
I'm with Jeff and Obala on this, I see both sides of this. We would love to see some market rate housing, and we do need market rate housing. I think, this location for Three Rivers is a win-win. They're going to get the points they need. Anywhere else they would go, they're not going to get the points they need. Market rate doesn't have to deal with that. I'm really kind of upset at some of the comments I've heard as well. I work in public housing. And I'm not going to go there either, but we do, so as a HRA as a whole, we have 500 people on our waiting list. There is a huge need in this town for this type of housing. Many of my tenants work, and they work hard, and they shop in Austin. I just know, I'm just trying to get my thoughts together here. I have a lot of notes. I don't know what kind of a wait list there is for the market rate housing. Does anybody ask Jana what her wait list is, or Chauncey Courtyard?
We have a couple openings now. We don't keep waiting lists. We have some interest.
Right.
Yeah, it does have a wait list. I spoke to this.
And that is what?
She does support market rate housing as well.
Well, but what is her wait list? Like, how many people? I mean, the flats are great. I think that they've been a great asset to our community. I don't know that we're a metro or urban community, but I second what Obala and Jeff said.
I think as we look at this project, it's clear that we need both market rate and affordable housing. We need housing, right? And I think we're in an enviable position that we've got a number of either firm options or options we're considering here. I think this is a great project. I think it's got a great opportunity for downtown Austin. I think market rate on this site has transformative opportunity for downtown Austin and what that unlocks over time as well. And so I guess I would put a motion on the table that we table this for 2 weeks to our next work session. Let's flesh out some additional details. I don't know that we're going to get a firm commitment, but I don't want to walk away from something that we have, bird in hand. I'm responsive to the need to keep this thing moving. At the same time, I'm hearing a lot of people say, hey, I like market rate as well. Hey, you got 2 weeks to put together a draft and figure out what this thing looks like. And then we make an informed decision of all the options that are on the table and what we think is best for the next 5 decades of the community. So I think we've got a couple of great options, and I think it's worth us taking 2 more weeks to dig in and put a deadline, and then come back and have the conversation. So that would be the motion I would put, is to table it for 2 weeks.
What does 2 weeks do to Three Rivers and the application process on this?
This would be a decision then on the April 19th work session that, if then approved, would have to go to the May whatever meeting. which is, again, part of the timeline. I can't, if the city council's not gonna support this, I can't take it to the Hormel Foundation meeting in April. They don't meet in May, so, they need foundation support for the project, which is why the timeline is so important in this project.
I agree with, I mean, everybody's got great points. Like I said, I feel like we're just getting crushed here. We got to do something now. You know, like you're saying, give it a few weeks. You know, we're hearing about this now. They want a decision tonight. You're saying a couple of weeks. I'm saying table it till 2022. I mean, nothing's going to be done now anyway. So give some time. You know, if you guys are making points of, you know, you guys coming with the developers, Jeff said, and there's no commitments, and you've had these people come before. Well, let's give the city some time to get us an answer. And if it comes back to a meeting, whatever, months from now, and they've got nothing, then the HRA gets approval. But I don't think tonight or in the next 2 weeks, we need to decide. I know they have a time frame, but this isn't exactly, you know, talking about building a house. This is a huge project that needs time. I'm saying table it till 2022 or table it for whatever, you know.
I think if we don't do it tonight, we might as well forget about it, because then it puts it off. And the developers, the market rate developers can still come in with a figure. Just because we approve this and move it forward tonight doesn't guarantee that the project gets approved. They still have to apply for it. And like we said, the Fox Point one didn't get approved the first time. So if they don't get approved the first time, that opens the door to the market rate guy and see what they have to offer if they come to the table with something. And like I say, sure, we all want market rate, but are we willing to pay for market rate?
But the purchase agreement is required by application. So the market rate wouldn't have an opportunity until earliest would be December. Susan, you can, or Taggart, I mean, you won't know whether you get award or not.
On Riverbend, you found out what, June, right? I think it was. June.
No, that was December.
I think. Fairly, I mean, yeah, in December. So.
Yeah, that's when you'd have a definitive whether or not you were approved. So they would have to, just for technical purposes, they'd have to wait until December. But just a couple other points. The prevailing rents that hamper market rate development are so critical. And I think part of it is just knowing, I mean, the project before us tonight is $333,000 a door in a $16 million project. The market rate one that we're looking at with Apex was $233,000 a door. So that one was 60 units at $14 million. So, and that wasn't a completed deal, but I mean, by way of comparison. Huh?
How much city money?
Well, I'm happy to share that with you. I don't want to do it on the public, to negotiate in front of the public, but I guess how these fit in the community is really important. I mean, those that are in Fox Point, I mean, they're from the numbers that, you know, I don't know what the adjusted ones would be for this one, but $14.88. Our New Tech folks that we went, you know, we did a economic development TIF, gave them the land. I mean, that was on the basis of adding tax value and adding good paying jobs. There isn't one of those employees other than the administrative assistant doesn't even qualify. Couldn't live in Fox Point today if they wanted to. So when we made a leap forward to try to support an important economic development project, this isn't workforce housing for New Tech. I mean, just by a numbers assessment. So, and when we say affordable housing and support, I mean, a 2-income at Fox Point, $35,400, that's for 2 people. If both people are working, that's less than what even minimum wage is. I mean, so.
Mother and child.
Yeah, but if they're two working people, it's less than minimum wage. I mean, what I'm trying to share with you is it's critically important to understand how these fit in the community. And the argument from everything I've heard isn't whether we support affordable unit or market rate, it's a matter of where. And two reasonable people can disagree whether they see the Y site as a desirable site or not a desirable site. I get that. I think most people and the private developers that we met with say it's a desirable site. So if we're going to spend more money on an income limited project and there's a waiting list on it, wouldn't we choose the spot that would be less desirable? Not because they're not as important to the community and everybody's important, but when we're trying to put all our eggs in a market rate basket to give it every chance for success, don't we want to put that in the best possible location that they're suggesting to us? To me, that's kind of something for you to think about too.
This is the best possible location for this project too, because the point's so high.
Well,
Yeah, no,
we need across all spectrums. We do need housing across all spectrums. There's no issue. But it's interesting that this meeting tonight was kicked off with a presentation by the Arts Center, or the Art Commission, on reimagining Main Street. And again, I'd sure hope this council would be one of, I like Jason's word, transformation. We can do the same thing we've done for the last 50 years and get what we've got, or we can do something that's different and provide the opportunity for market rate in downtown. Jeff, I know the word was probably stronger than you wanted to, but you used the word blackmail. I want to be very careful to note that both of the entities of Apex and Stencil know nothing about the low to moderate income project. We're very careful not to put any pressure on them. They know zero about it. They're a proven commodity, especially the Stencil group. Their build, your comment on build for nothing, isn't that actually an asset? Because all the Stencil group asked for to build that market rate 82 unit flats on 21st is the tax abatement money for 5 years. So that to me also tells us that they're very invested in the community.
Blackmail might have been too strong a word, but you would not have pitched that site when you went to them if you didn't know about this project. You were still pitching the post office site, correct? If you didn't know about this project, would you even have mentioned the Y to the Apex group on Thursday?
I would say it was off my radar. I mean, it wasn't. It was about a week prior when I drove by and kind of reimagined what I think that could be. But regardless, once you have information, you go with it. And I think that what the benefit we have tonight is, what I hear is we're asking for just a little more time, whether that's 2 weeks, 2 months, or a year. But I don't want to be constrained by city council meetings either. There could probably be a special meeting called if we do find something out relatively soon. I don't know the dynamics of how developers work if we do tell them there's a project on the table, and that, but I don't. There's been no pressure applied to the market rate, and these folks are would love the opportunity to transform what I consider downtown Austin.
Okay, like I said before, the reason this project works is because of the location. It's not going to fly if we don't build it, if it doesn't get built in this location, because the location point's so high. So trying to say that we can get market rate apartments built at the Y site, and then that this project will get built somewhere else, is not going to happen. Secondly, I'd be willing to give you all the time in the world that it takes. If you can guarantee me tonight that if this project doesn't go forward, we will have a market rate project built on that site and it won't cost the city a dime. Exactly. So we are so set in our demand for market rate housing that we're willing to invest money in a project when we also have a demand for the LMI housing that we can get built get a project going right now that will in the end cost the city nothing. And actually probably put money back in our pockets to maybe go towards a different project of market rate housing.
Your Honor and Council, I think what is sitting before us is not a matter of who can afford it or who is more value in town. I want to make sure every decision we make here, we don't see other people, they are not being valued, or they are not those, because when we talk here, we're making a decision for our citizen, and anyone here is important. Doesn't matter your status or your background. We want to make sure we are treating anyone coming to Austin. If we are a champion as a welcoming community, we have to make sure we look into all those background. And building affordable housing in that location is a win-win to the community, because let's look, for example, if someone moving to Austin right now who is starting a job at Hormel or Hormel Plan or QPP, or you are going to school for college and you have a nursing assistant or office administration at Mayo Clinic, you will not be able to afford to live in flat 21. That will be too expensive for you. And if you are a new arrival, like a refugee like me, who moved to America 7 years ago without a dollar, I will not be able to afford something to live in a flat 21. One thing I will say, do they have affordable housing? And that's what attracts so many immigrants to this local community here, because we know there is industry that support them. When it comes to a private market rate, when Flat 21 start talking to us, no one knew, even I didn't know that the outside location will attract so many people, business people from Hormel to live there, because it's out of sight. But because of the way the private constructors, they know how to attract people. If you're a private or you're a business owner, you know how to attract your customers. If we will have a private constructor, a market rate, doesn't matter if they like the town, it doesn't matter they're building this apartment outside in Todd Park. If they make it the best apartment that anyone who is 15 to 25 to 30, you make $80 million in Austin, you will go there and live there. But this location here is very important, because there's a process. There's a process. There's a process for you to qualify for this program. This is what they want. A market rate can build there anywhere. For example, we've seen Flat 21. 2 years ago, they built theirs there. I went there to look for apartment there. I can't afford it. I can't afford it because I was still going to school, and I can't make a lot of that much. But as we move forward, if we have a private developer who really want to invest in Austin, we can show them, well, this is what we have, and this is what our city can offer. Please, if you want to invest in our town, build this here. And let us not lose this opportunity that we have in front of us. And then 20 years from now, we will think back and see, we wish we have built that apartment in that old YMC. And one thing, Council, if we look into this, if we postpone this to a 2-year project, or we look into, let us not forget that YMC, they're still paying for that building. The maintenance is still costing them. They are tired, and they're overwhelmed with what they are paying for something that they don't use it. So it's a win-win for the city. Any decision we make here, I'm okay with market rate. I'm okay with affordable. But what we have on the table here today, our attention is called for us to be a welcoming community. We have to have affordable housing to welcome those people to work in our industry here. So it's not who is right, but what is right for our city.
I just want to touch on kind of one personal example that I have. I have a friend who works for a nonprofit. She's born and raised in Albert Lea, single mom. She was in affordable housing in Albert Lea and was in it for 15, 20 years. She got a little bit more professional job working at a nonprofit. Kind of wanted something better and couldn't find it in Albert Lea because they have the same struggles we are. She was actually one of the very first people in Flats 21st when it opened up. She was so excited. She's an Austinite now. She's here, buying things here, paying taxes here, and just as important, she opened up a slot for somebody else from the apartment that she moved out of. And so, you know, we're talking a little bit about who can afford to go where, and I absolutely understand, and we do need across all spectrums. I do think that a market rate, or even a touch above market rate, would open up more opportunities for folks who would love that, but they just don't have the opportunity. If we're talking about income qualifiers, that's something that I feel like I know a fair amount about in town, and I can tell you that Hormel and QPP, we're talking around $18.50 an hour they start at the plant, and they get to about 20 now now after 18 months. And so you're talking around $40,000 with no overtime. And if you talk to anybody who works there, they make overtime. And so they're going to be pushing the boundaries of this building, to be quite honest. Now, obviously, if you have a single parent with a couple of kids, they probably can qualify, and that's great. But if we think that we're going to have two working folks or family, or even one that's working part-time somewhere and another person working, they're not going to qualify for this building. Because our employers have done a good job of building up some of the wage base in our town. And we're starting to see some real traction there. And just looking at the economy right now, I don't think that's going to go backwards. I only think it's going to go forward.
One is, if we don't do this project this year, obviously not ideal, can we still do it? And then
Okay, if I can interrupt, you have to be on a microphone because I can't hear you at all. Please.
that was going to be all off the record, Ann, but that's fine. No, two questions.
Okay,
So,
thank you so much.
first one is, and I'm just trying to explore possibilities here. One is, if we don't do this project this year, can we go apply for it again next year? Like, and does anything fundamentally change other than we're another year out?
I think the biggest question there would.
Tiger, microphone.
Sorry, Ann.
All right, Ann, can you hear me? I think that's a question to ask Three Rivers. I mean, they're the ones that putting the skin in the game in this. And also Diane, I mean, she's the one, her building's gonna sit empty. So I mean, yes, technically speaking, we can. The point systems change every 2 years. Costs will probably go up. So that's another consideration. But I mean, really, that's a question for Susan. I mean, if they're willing to, I'll let you answer that.
So, yes, we could potentially submit it the following year. What the sort of interesting thing about MHFA is that they change their scoring every 2 years. So this is the beginning of a new scoring criteria. So we have 2 shots at this, bite of the apple, the same scoring system this year and next year. So after that, we don't know how this project would score. They could completely change their geographic scoring and be something else. So time is critical. If we're going to put together a competitive proposal for this year, we have to start moving. We have to spend money. We're already spending money on putting this proposal together. So, I guess not making a decision is making a decision in a lot of ways, from our perspective. So, I really see the value of putting together a strong proposal for workforce housing. We've done it in many communities, and, it's always a balance of when communities come to us and ask us, can you put a proposal for us together? We have limited staff, so we have to look at it every year, how we're going to, kind of shift our resources in order to be able to work on the best projects.
Thank you. And obviously, you guys are great helpers, or great partners, and, have done outstanding work here. Second aspect of the question is, oops, sorry.
You were asking.
Go ahead.
On the 2 year, I didn't know if Diane had some input on that, if she wanted to.
Up at the podium. Yeah.
Essentially, I think the takeaway is it just continues to cost the Y money unless obviously somebody comes in and buys it, right?
Correct.
That's a fair.
Our costs are conservatively $100,000. That's not my time, that's strict cost. The foundation has supported us to about half of that, so the other half, we eat it. Again, it's stressful. I mean, it's a stressful job right now. Everything is stressful. This makes a lot of sense. It's a real hardship, the time, the resources, and the foundation is basically saying, you guys need to figure something out here.
Okay.
And we thought we did, so.
Second question is, let's say this project doesn't go through. Are there other areas in town to build affordable housing? Maybe not this specific project, but it feels like we've got a track record of building stuff, and there's more, whether it's the foundation or it's grants or it's the city participation, like those factors still exist, right?
Well, the big thing is, like Susan said, is the scoring. It comes out every 2 years. So we really won't know that, what qualifies in 2 years. I think, Susan, you can help me out on this, but the Fox Point, a lot of that was how the land was acquired because it was foreclosed on, correct? There was some extra points there, and there's some environmental stuff. So there was extra points gained there because of that. So, until we go to each site, and, it's hard to say, but as far as the overview of what they did, I mean, the site matters. I mean, that's the home run here, so.
All right, well, we certainly have a motion on the table. I think to table it for 2 weeks was the motion. But just for further comment, I sit here a firm believer that life is all about balance. And I believe we're out of balance on our housing needs, or at least what we've been filling over the last 50 years. Anecdotally only, because I've asked the number, but maybe it's hard to get. I anecdotally believe that Austin has a precipitously more low to moderate income housing than any of our like cities of our populations. And there's always room for more, of course, but what we're out of balance with is our market rate. It took 50 years to get one built, and having really what I consider great opportunity before us, but for this timeline that was foisted upon us within 6 weeks. So 6 weeks ago, it borders on unfair how and when it was presented to give us an opportunity. Again, the Y sat with a for sale sign out front for a couple of years. Again, the lost year of the pandemic, I think it matters that the price was reduced from 2.4. Of course, nobody's interested in that. 1.5, not interested in that. 600,000, we got some interest. The feedback we have from our two prospective developers, when they heard the demolition costs of demo and abatement of asbestos, where that was completely by surprise to them. They thought it would be in that $1 million range, and it's in that $300,000 to $500,000 range, or $300,000 to $400,000 range. Anyway, I think I would certainly, I think we could benefit from some time. We potentially could have a special meeting if we do get that time. So to say it's going to be kicked down for another meeting at 2-week intervals, no, we could move quicker than that if we did have the opportunity to provide a little more time for these developers.
Jeff,
I think Mr. Dankert mentioned that if we don't act on it for the next meeting, the Harmel Foundation is not going to do a special meeting for this, I don't think. I don't know if that's their normal way of operating, but he says they don't have a meeting in May, so to make their April meeting, we need to act as soon as possible. And the Harmel Foundation funding is a key or part of this.
And
Foundation meeting is shortly after the 19th meeting currently scheduled. There's no meeting in May, so we'd have to ask for a special meeting from them for this funding, which is again why we're at the process we're at.
So special meetings could be done, but when I talked to Raleigh and Ms. Dankert too, they were, as I said before, all ears. So I don't think they're pressured by putting a low to moderate income on that site. They'd be open to whatever the city comes forward with. Whether it's a week or two or whatever. I mean, if you give us something, I guess we have something. I'd love to have longer, but unfortunately the timeline was presented to us and we're kind of bound by it.
May I make a suggestion? Could we get this on the April 19th council meeting? That gives you 2 weeks to get your your market rate development to bring to that council meeting at the same time. And if something doesn't come to fruition of the market rate project, or it costs too much city money, you'll have the information that gives the developer 2 weeks to get there. And then if you don't get the information, you don't get it back, it doesn't make sense, you know what this project is, you could approve it then on the 19th, that we could then take it to the next step.
that doesn't give us any time to talk to those developers though.
Gives you 2 weeks.
You know, Jeff, you made comment at our retreat that you would like the people in the different organizations to bring some feedback to council on what's going on. Maybe I would have had some information from the HRA being on their board if I would have known, but I knew this a week and a half ago. So I'm feeling pressure too, being an HRA and the city, saying I'm just learning about all this too. Some time would be great, so I'm going to second Jason's motion on tabling this for 2 weeks.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? So the motion is that we table this till April 19th meeting,
Work session.
work session, and we'll go from there. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I want to read the roll, Tom.
Councilmember Pashusta. Councilmember Fisher. Baskin. Obala. Waller. Councilmember Postma. Councilmember at Large Austin. I don't know, does the mayor break votes in work sessions? Otherwise, it's a tie vote right now.
I would vote aye for the tie.
Motion to table passes, 3-3 with the mayor, or 4-3 with the mayor breaking, 4-3 with the mayor breaking the tie.
Well, I guess we'll research whether I can break the tie or not and have to vote later, I guess, but it's 3-3 or 4-3 with my tie. You know, again, the discussion I had, or at least my presentation started with, that we're all here in the best interest of Austin. And I want to reinforce that no matter which way this goes. I think to our benefit, at least we got 2 more weeks. Whether that's enough to see any movement with our private developers or not, I guess we'll live with that. So I'm happy that this meeting wasn't crazy contentious. Everybody got to speak their piece, and we'll see where this lands. At this point, it's considered something that we'll table until April 19th work session, unless something is different. Now moving on to deferred sewer and water assessments. Stephen Lang. Thanks, folks, for coming. Thanks for your input.
Steven, you're driving them away.
They don't want to stick around for you.
All right, so we have I want to share my screen, if I could, Ann, with the council. We did not provide backup on this because it has some private owner information. We wanted to share it with the council and get your input before things would be sent out from us to members and these property owners. So we have deferred assessments, and what that means is at some point in the past, mainly the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, infrastructure was built in different neighborhoods, and as that infrastructure was built, the existing homes were assessed, and the empty lots, the cost of the construction associated with the frontage of the empty lots was deferred. A lot of times it was deferred for a period of time or until the property was developed. Sometimes both of those stipulations were added. Other times it was just till it was developed, and sometimes there was no requirements put on those deferments. So a wide variety of things. Currently, so examples of this would be out in Austin Acres. Many of you are familiar with the Austin Acres area. And on this map, pink represents a sewer and water deferred assessment. Blue represents a water deferred assessment, and green represents just sanitary sewer. So if we were to zoom in this area, let me refresh here a second. You can see, well, without the color coding, there are 2 empty lots. Envision that there are 2 empty lots right here. Oh my goodness. I think my computer is tired.
We all are.
As many of you are. But here we go. 2 empty lots located right here. When the sanitary sewer was built on 19th Street, it was determined that it would be deferred and not charged to these 2 empty lots until sometime in the future. Well, this project was likely done in the late 80s, early 90s, and here we are nearly 30 years later, and we still have deferred assessments hanging out against these properties. So Ann and her department, again, I'm sorry I didn't mention, this is a combined effort between the engineering department who initiated the projects, the finance department that oversees where the money is coming from and tracking all the dollars, and also the clerk's department that oversees these deferred assessments and assessment rolls and those sorts of things. So all 3 of us are looking to get some direction here tonight. As we look at this, it started out with a list of approximately 85 properties that have deferred assessments in the city. They total $328,000, $329,000 of deferred assessments, mainly sewer and water, few other items like asphalt and some utilities, stubs. We looked at that list and said, okay, we have a group of them, 28 of them, were part of a 1991 assessment resolution that was consolidating previous deferred assessments that were prior to 1981. So we got this slug of 28 of them that was for some time prior to 1981, and they're a scattered mixed bag. They're fairly small in nature, and we look at that group from that resolution prior to 1981, and we look at that and said, okay, if we were to assess that, we could go ahead and assess it, or request council to move forward with assessments of this. But it would be very difficult to research these and try to figure out if people started to question the assessment, why we are assessing them, it'd be very difficult and time consuming for us to research that information. And we could easily come up with some staff time that would start to eat into this $10,000 of assessments for these 28 properties. If we were to just assess these folks, and if council was okay with us telling them, you know what, you were part of a resolution your property was part of a resolution back in 1981. There were real costs that were set aside for your property. We are now going to assess them. And if that answer is good enough for residents, it could be fairly straightforward to assess these properties. But if they start questioning it, and they expect an answer of exactly what that property was assessed for, it could be very time consuming. So what we have done is we have removed these 28 properties from the remaining assessments, and we've come up with this new list of remaining assessed properties, which still accounts for $318,000 of assessments. There are 57 properties associated with this. Many of them, these assessments occurred between 1985 and 1998. So these property assessments range from anywhere from 25 to 35 years old, these deferred assessments. Again, it's real money, real costs hanging out there that the finance department, I assume, would like to get that money recouped at some point in the future. And we wanted to talk to you tonight, and maybe at this time I'll turn it over to Ann to talk about why we're bringing this forward now, why we want to initiate this at this time.
Yeah, so the reason why we're bringing this forward now, one of the major reasons, these are 30 plus years old. We keep this stuff on index cards. We don't have a great program for tracking this kind of stuff. So we have index cards and binders and old resolutions. These are all of our old resolutions that we track and keep, and everything's in paper. Well, the person who has the greatest knowledge of all of this is Cheryl in my office, and Cheryl's been here for 43 years, and she will be retiring soon. And like Stephen said, a lot of staff time to research all of this. A lot of her knowledge is priceless on these items. And, once she's out the door, we don't have that knowledge anymore. So, honestly, it would just be great to get all of these off of our card file, get all of these pushed down the road and just get it satisfied. The Stephen said that original assessment that had over 200 resolution or individual properties on it, and we're down to about 28 left. So we've issued 170 some satisfactions off of one single resolution from 1981, and some of them are for $100 and it costs $46 to satisfy it. So it's just, these encompass time, staff time, sitting out there. And we'd just like to get them cleared off of our books also.
Like Ann said, it has taken 40 years to go from 200 on this 1981 resolution. Originally, there were 200 assessments there, cut it down to 28 in 40 years. So how long do we want to keep holding these out there along with the other 58 remaining assessments?
So what would normally trigger those 58 would, like Stephen said, the development, 30 years or until developed, or the sale of the property. So a lot of time in purchase agreements, the standard purchase agreement form says, the buyer or the buyer would assume or the seller will pay off. And it usually says seller will pay off any deferred assessments. So when the properties are transferred, that's when these typically would have gotten paid. So some of these people are the original owners of the property from 35 years ago. So they just haven't been transferred yet. If we keep them on the books, eventually, all of it would be transferred at some point, I guess. But there's also a complication, if the county or the city, if we do like a split of the property, what's the new legal, what's the new PIN number? The county had a couple on there that they had completely changed the legals and the PIN numbers. So again, the longer it sits, how it's developed, how it's split, how it's transferred, we do have the risk of loss of that too.
You can see many of these assessments are $5,000 or less for both sewer and water. If a homeowner questions something, our current hookup fee for sanitary sewer is $17,000. But back in the late 80s and early 90s when these projects were constructed, the cost was considerably less. So an alternative would be to, wipe away all the assessments, and when they come to hook up to sanitary sewer, they could be paying the higher $17,000 hookup fee, which I don't think any of them would like. And I'm not recommending that we wipe away all the assessments, just that's an alternative. There are a few higher assessments listed on here, one of them being Emmanuel Baptist Church, and the other one being this company. Both of those assessments, one of them is $49,000, one of them is $16,000. Most of the other ones, like I said, are in that less. Here's a couple larger ones, but most of them are less than $5,000. Those two properties that I mentioned that have the higher assessments are located. The $49,000 is located out here west of Target. Back when Target developed, back in the late 80s, probably the late 90s, 98. There were costs set aside for the infrastructure that was built there, so that when this property developed, they would pay their fair share for those costs that were involved in the Target development. The other one was the church located down here on 12th Street Southwest. Again, cost associated with infrastructure extension that were deferred until they developed. So those are examples. And Ann or Tom, anything else to add?
Nope, I mean, we've got spreadsheets that we back up with Ann's card system so that we have things for the auditors to show the revenues, expenses coming in. Part of those assessments, as Stephen noted, were utilities assessments for water mains, for which I think the email today was they prefer that those get assessed sooner rather than later and repaid in a shorter period of time rather than a longer period of time. I guess we're of the same opinion. Good news is the bonds that were issued to pay the city side of them have been paid off. So we don't need that cash flow to pay those bonds off. But again, other taxpayers did pay for that project themselves. And, you know, this is why I think Ann's bringing this forward tonight is, it's been 30 to 40 years for some of these, and any repayment structure is going to add another probably 5 to 10 years. It's 50 years for some of these things. A decision needs to be made, in our opinion, and time has come.
So do you have a formula?
So a couple of things we'd be looking for from the council tonight would be, do you want us to move forward with some of these assessments, getting rid of these deferreds? Do you agree with removing the assessments that were, the deferred assessments that were prior to 1981? Or if you would like us to go ahead and assess these, if the homeowners get an explanation that isn't necessarily up to par, you know, what level of research do you want to put into this, to justify these $10,000 worth of assessments? So that's kind of those are the things that we're looking for some direction on tonight.
And I did do some research on that particular resolution of the ones that Stephen was just talking about. And the council minutes from 1981 just say, just anything that's out there, basically put on one resolution and defer it. So there's not a lot of direction for us to say what project file did this come from, you know, where did it start, what year did it start. But with the other ones, we do have particular project files that we can track because they weren't just a mass deferral.
And do you have a formula for what you would imagine it be with a payback period of allowing X amount of years?
Utilities requested 5 to 10 years. You know, the current interest rate we charge people for this year's projects was 3.5%. So I guess my thought would be that interest rate with 5 to 10 years max.
Council, comments?
I mean, a lot of these projects are less than our current street projects, you know, and we give them 15, so I think 5 to 10 is pretty reasonable, so.
Seems like we were fair with the 45-year method so far. We've been more than fair, yeah. Council, questions, comments, going forward, what do you want to do?
Most of these homeowners, did they know that this is sitting out there because they were the original one, or is this gonna come out of the clear blue sky for them?
I would say the ones on the current spreadsheet that Stephen has up, probably most would know, just by the projects and stuff, but there will be some surprises. I don't know if you would agree with that, Stephen.
Oh, I think they will have chosen to forget, and it will be a surprise to everyone.
Selective amnesia.
Yep.
Okay, anybody want to make a motion to bring it forward?
I think, what are we looking for? Just some direction, and then we will move it forward. We probably don't need an official, we don't need to bring it forward to the next council meeting, right? We're just looking for direction to staff to start moving this forward.
Clean up the books. Yep, go ahead.
Start in the first and the third wards and let us know how it goes.
Most of them are in the second ward there, Jason.
They're all in the second ward.
That's good. That's good answer that they are all in second words. You don't need question. I think Council Jason is ready for those answers, especially for those who tend to forget. So
I heard Jason was trying to bankrupt a church. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and Mike makes a valid comment. There's reasons these were deferred, and there could be some pushback on some of them. So did we get direction to move forward with the list of 58 and drop the 20?
I think the key for whenever we do, I do think how we might need to be a little more delicate on outreach. if we just drop them a letter saying you owe 12 grand from 40 years ago, that might freak some folks out. I don't know what the answer is. It's just something to think about.
Be delicate.
Yeah, we'll send some information, and I mean, we'll have to do a hearing on this. It'll be like a regular assessment. It won't just be a bill. I mean, they'll have an opportunity to come in, you know, so we'll have to follow the same process.
All right, thank you. Is there administrator?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
With that being a long meeting, it's 8:30 already, and Craig, with no administrative report, I'd take a motion to adjourn the work session.
Could I just make a couple of comments? They'll be brief. Paul mentioned when we talked about the committees at the retreat, I don't think that has anything to do with what happened here tonight. You're on the HRA board. If you were blindsided by this, then you need to go to Taggart and say, why wasn't I given a heads up?
You're right. You hear him tonight, what he had to say, and then I will talk to him about that.
Okay. Also, I guess I hope that this project, because it came from Taggart, I hope that didn't affect people's votes, that it wasn't forwarded by somebody else. I think we have to look at our HRA as our housing expert, and when they put together a project for a housing project, we need to give it its due diligence and support it if it works.
And I think just to make a comment on that too, I think that's what we're here for, to give them due diligence. That's what we're also asking for our private developers. And I was fortunate to sit through Jim Herm as a HRA administrator or director, and then John Erickson, and now Taggart. And the past 12 years, we've been always told as council that we can't get private developers in here because of the HRA market is so, the rents are so reasonable that a private developer can't make money. So here we are again with HRA, at one hand, at least in the past, has said we can't get private developers. Now we've had one in 2020, now we have a potential two. So I think it's in the best interest of everybody to just hear that offer from these, and I hope the 2 weeks that we've bought can at least get something from those private developers. If not, then I guess we're going to go with is the low to moderate, and that'll be a fine deal too. But I just want to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity to bite at the apple, because things have certainly changed in the last year as far as pricing and also the market.
Second, motion to adjourn.